Hi there, and welcome to today's session on the two-page federal resume, what you need to know. My name is Meredith Matherly. I am one of your career coaches with American Public University System. I also have over 10 years working with the federal government, mostly on our public lands. So I am pretty familiar with the federal application process and resumes and some of the big updates that have been going on this year. So the purpose of this session is to share some best practices and tools for building a strong federal resume while complying with the new two-page requirement added in 2025. So we're going to start out with some overall best practices for building that federal resume and then move into a demo portion within USAJobs, as well as show you some example federal resumes. So keep in mind, the information I'm going to share is coming from resources and webinars put on by the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, and I do always recommend utilizing what they put out and USA Jobs for the most up-to-date and detailed information on these topics. So in response to the 2025 Merit Hiring Plan that was put out this year as of September 27th, 2025, all federal resumes are now required to be no longer than 2 pages. So that means we're a lot closer now to if you already have a private sector resume, you're used to that. But if you're someone who's used to those 5, 7+ page federal resumes, it can feel a little overwhelming to get that down to 2 pages. And especially because we still need to now more than ever make sure that we are tailoring those resumes to show exactly how we qualify for the job, since we have to get it all into those 2 pages. So we're going to talk about how we can do that though. But first, let's look at some required information for federal resumes. Again, it's going to look pretty similar to a private sector as far as what you want to have on there, but they do require a couple other additional things. So in addition, of course, you want that name, email, and phone number at the top as the minimum. When it comes to listing our work experiences, these are the things we want to make sure are on there. We have our job title. If it was a federal experience, we need to make sure to list the series and grade. For all jobs, we also need to list the start and end dates, the month and the year. Or if you're still there, you say present. And then this is a big one that not everyone thinks about. The hours worked per week have to be on every federal application. Why that is because if they're looking to see if you're qualified for a specific position based on how much time you've had of similar experience at other ones, they need to see those hours worked per week. And then again, the big thing is that your resume must address all the required qualifications in the job announcement, showing them how you meet them, why you're a good candidate for them, and speaking to each one, which we'll go into a little more detail later. But now, some jobs are also going to require you to show your education, especially if you're applying based on being qualified based on your education and not experience or a combination of the two. So when that is the case, make sure to include the name and school of your school or institution. For American Public University System, we do recommend using our full name, whether you're AMU or APU, because that is what we are accredited under. List your completion date or your expected graduation date if it's in the future, month and year of what you expect to graduate, the degree, and as well as your GPA. Now we will look at under the USA Jobs Builder a little bit later. That part is not listed as required, but some job announcements specifically will request that. So it's good to potentially add that. And also notice this note at the bottom. This is just the basic requirements of what needs to be in a federal resume, work experience and education. But each job announcement will have its own additional requirements often. So key to look at them extremely closely and make sure we're not missing anything. This is just the basics. All right, so a couple tips for getting that 5, 7+ page resume down to 2 pages keeping it strong. Or if you're starting out, you've never built a federal resume, here's some tips to making sure that it will stand out. All right, so first of all, we are going to prioritize our most relevant and recent experience, meaning, in the past with federal resumes, it was kind of put in every job, or at least, all the jobs that relate, show multiple times how you've done that task, met that qualification. Whereas now with 2 pages, we just don't have that opportunity. We have to fit it in. So if you have a job that you've done more recently that meets the qualifications, and you also have an older one, but it was very similar, maybe it was from a long time ago, we don't necessarily need to also include that if it was covered by a more recent experience. That also has to do with our bullet points as well, keeping them concise, only using the most relevant ones, taking out ones that don't necessarily apply to this specific job. And when it comes to results-focused language, HR officials and then hiring officials, they really want to quickly look and see what you've accomplished. And also, quantifiable data is fantastic if you can show that through numbers, percentages, how many people you supervised, what something you did that increased overall customer satisfaction, something like that. Those stand out so much more than just a list of duties. We don't want to just be copying and pasting our duties from previous jobs that we've held. We want to show what we actually did. What did we do to stand out? So going along again with the job announcement, we're not necessarily having to copy and paste those qualifications. What we want to do though is align the language. So again, when those HR officials are glancing through, they're looking for key skills, key things that you've done that meets those qualifications. They want to easily find that. So make sure your terminology, your language is matching what they say in the job announcement so they can easily pull those out, as well as skills and competencies. And then, of course, like we already mentioned, we have to tailor. So we'll look in a minute here at a job announcement of how we can find those qualifications and if they've used an occupational questionnaire and use that to help tailor and build our resumes. All right, so speaking of which, that's our quick tips. We're going to go into now looking at USAJobs. And it's got me signed in. Thank you. It always signs me out. So building a resume and then doing that and looking at a specific job. So you do not have to use the USAJobs Federal Resume Builder, but we do highly recommend it because that will at least ensure, again, that you are including at least the most basic requirements. And what I love about it, and I think this might be newer, but the format has changed a bit so that it's really condensing your jobs and condensing your resume. It might not be the most visually appealing necessarily, but it is the template they use. So it's making it so that you can fit a lot in there, even in just 2 pages. So for example, let me show you my resume, from a few years back, my last federal resume, where I included, pretty much every job I'd had for the last 10, 15 years. It went into a lot of detail, responsibilities, accomplishments. You can see for each one, I had like 4 or 5 lines just for the title information. I made sure to include any awards, all trainings, all coursework, things like that. Even if a job repeated itself, that I did similar tasks in a future one, I still included it because that's just how you did it back then. But again, now we got to get it down to those 2 pages. So instead of using, almost a full page for one job, I'm going to pull out the most relevant 4 to 5 bullet points that combine both my responsibilities and accomplishments using that quantifiable data into just, looking more like the size of this section here for each job. So let's look over at a newer version. Now, this is a very small version of that resume, but this is using the Federal Resume Builder. You can see how when I put that in, it really, like I say, condensed. So my title, my location, the hours worked, it's all on two clean lines. I have a few bullet points for each, making sure to include that quantifiable data, the numbers, the accomplishments, what helps you stand out, education, relevant trainings, and things like that. Now, this one's not complete because I probably want to add some more for each job, but it's a starting point and it shows you just, how much you really can get into it with that resume, federal resume builder. You really can get a lot on there. But it's great still to have your 5+ page one because it's ready to go when you are applying to different jobs that want different things. You can pull out different bullet points that are more relevant, pull out different jobs that are more relevant. And so you don't need to delete this, keep this as your master, and then work from it to tailor to each job. All right, so that's looking at a couple resumes there, but oh, it's signed me out, of course. I took too long. All right, let's get it back in here. Okay, so when we are ready to either update or build our resume, let's say we have our base resume like I just showed you, and we want to tailor it. We're going to look at a specific job. Again, we're not just going to throw the same resume into every single one. So I brought up a job earlier to look at. Let's open you. Okay, now I chose this one because, I have some education and training in my background, so I thought this sounded interesting. Um, I'm not going into a full tutorial of how to use USAJobs today, how to navigate that. We're going to do another session on that, and there is lots of information on USAJobs on utilizing USAJobs as well. So I want to keep this focused on the resume portion today. So I just brought up a job, and we're going to start by looking at two things to see if we are able to apply for this job. We're going to start with, are we even eligible? And then we're going to look at, are we qualified? So when it comes to eligibility, we look at the top here, this job is open to. You may see all sorts of little, they're emojis in a way. They're little visuals of who this is open to. Now, this one specifically, it's open to the public. So anyone can apply as long as you're a U.S. citizen and national. Um, it's also open specifically to students and recent grads. But since it's open to the public, anyone can apply. So we don't have to worry about that part. But there will be times where it's just specific to, you work for this agency already, or only for veterans, or so check that first. You don't want to go to all the trouble of tailoring your resume to a job you're not qualified for or eligible for, excuse me. So eligibility first, we meet that. So let's see if we're qualified. We're gonna skip the duties requirements for now. Check out the requirements, but these are usually pretty similar, but definitely check out the requirements and then look at our qualifications. So for this one, since it is a GS7, a lot of times GS up to GS9 or so will let us qualify based on either education or experience or a combination of the two. So check that out every time, see if you might qualify based on your education, even if you don't have the relevant experience. So this one does allow you to do that, education or specialized experience. If you have the experience at a lower level, a GS5 for a year, doing these things that they mention, then you can consider applying, or a combination of the two. So if you have some experience and some of the qualifying education, then you can combine those to be qualified. All right, so we're going to look again at two ways to tailor our resume, two sections here. We now know we're eligible. We've decided we're qualified. So how are we going to tailor our resume? In the qualifications, it's going to mention that specialized experience. So if we have that, we do want to speak to that in our resume. And it also might have a section like this, the known as KSA's, knowledge, skills, and abilities. So we can make sure to speak to each of these in our resume. If we can, never make anything up, never try to make it bigger than what we did, but try to speak to everything that we do qualify on. And again, you don't want to necessarily just copy and paste, but using similar terminology and then incorporating it into those accomplishments so that they can see not only that we do have this, but how did we get it? How did we use it? Things like that. So we're going to speak to all the qualifications, but also some jobs, if we come down here to how do I apply, we can preview the application questionnaire. So if you click on that, again, do this ahead of time. And, we're going to get past the basic yes or no questions. Are you a veteran? Have you done this? Do you have this status? Type of things like that. And we can go, for now, let's go straight down to those occupational questions. And it looks like this one, we have about 15 or so. What these usually look like is just going to be the lowest is I don't have any experience in this, up to all the way to I'm considered an expert in performing this task. The more you have of expert, the higher chance that you will get passed on to a hiring official. Now, again, we're not going to lie. We're not going to put we're an expert if we've never done this. But I also like to say don't be humble. If you do have some experience in this, if you've even, supervised it a bit and you're very comfortable, consider rating yourself a little higher as long as you can speak to it. So again, this is what we're going to also be adding to our resume. This, 15 questions, that's long. So, it doesn't have to be, again, word for word. We're not copy and pasting this necessarily, but we do want to make sure we're using keywords. You could even combine some of these into one bullet point potentially on your resume so it doesn't take up, 15 lines, but just make sure that somewhere in there, especially if you're saying you have the higher experience in it, it must be represented in your resume somewhere. Okay, going back up, because I do want to point out there is a new section on all job applications at this time as well. Now, this could change. It is newer. We'll see. But at this time, we do also have, you'll see that what's a little bit newer this year are these short essay questions. They're going to speak to your commitment to the Constitution, how you would use your skills and experience to improve efficiency and effectiveness in the government, and speaking on president's executive orders, things like that. Now, at this time, I do want you to see that these responses are not required and will not be scored. So if we're going by this, with what OPM says at this time, if you leave them blank, it should not harm your application in any way. I will say though, if you decide to fill them out, keep in mind anyone can be reading those. They may have different opinions, different stances. So just be very mindful of what you put for these questions if you do decide to answer them. All right, so those are the two main ways we are tailoring our resume ahead of time. How we know how we're going to build that resume is based on what are the qualifications that I need to speak to. And if there's an occupational questionnaire, what are those questions that I'm saying I'm an expert or that I have experience on that I need to address in my resume as well, looking at those two things. Now you can also, as a little bonus, you can go back up to the top. You can look at duties. The duties are what you're going to be doing in this new job. So it does not mean you've had to do them already. But of course, if you have experience in them, that's going to look pretty good. So feel free to speak to these as well, showing that you have that relevant experience to the duties as well, if you haven't already within the qualifications or the questionnaire. And then again, like I said, every application is going to be different. So important in addition to that required information that you have on your resume, that you make sure you include anything else that they required documents, transcripts if you're saying that you're eligible based on education, any veterans documents, SF-50s if you're a previous federal employee or a current federal employee. If you miss just one of these documents that's required, they will not come back to you and say, hey, we think you look great, but you're missing a document. No, it's not there. you're off the cert. You're not making it forward. So that is up to you to make sure of all those pieces ahead of time. So looking at those, the resume builder again, let's just, here I gotta delete one so that I can show you a new one. This one was one I was just showing today. So now if you have fully filled out your profile when you created your USA Jobs account, what's great about that is if you fully filled it out already with your relevant work experience, with your education, with your trainings, all of that, then when it's time to build a resume, you can just pull from which jobs you want to include, which educations, anything that's relevant in this section, and take out the ones that are less relevant. So what's great about this, again, it's going to make sure all the at least the basic requirements are met. It also gives you tips on the side of each page, what to include, what not to include. Here's a little preview. So if you want to add a work experience, you're just filling the information in, and then it's going to format it for you. Again, that'll turn out looking just like this based on what you put in. So you can take away positions, you can add education. And then again, you can see these sections are all optional. Now, if you have any relevant training, certifications, language, additional information is if you have things, if there are things mentioned in that job that are required and you want to mention them here in additional information, that's a great place for them. If you have any of these to make you a stronger candidate, make sure to add those in those optional sections. Because again, federal jobs, they're getting hundreds and hundreds of applications often. And now you can only show yourself in 2 pages, but so can everyone else. So you're not alone there. So we just have to put whatever we can to help us stand out, to help us show, hey, we qualify for this job. Look at everything we've done that shows our accomplishments directly related to this, our transferable skills, everything like that. So we're going to fill out those categories. It's going to create that resume for us. We're going to apply for the job, and we're going to hope for the best. All right, as we wrap up here, get our final screen up here. A reminder first, again, for most up-to-date and more detailed information, please visit USA Jobs help pages. They have tons of resources that go in more depth on this topic, as well as the Office of Personnel Management pages and YouTube channels. And also, though, remember, we put on these webinars, but we are also here to be your coaches to offer one-on-one support. So if you are a current student of APUS, or then if you're an alumni, you have our services for life. So we would love to assist you with all your career-related needs. We can provide federal resume reviews. We can go through the application process with you, go into more detail. Would love to help you. And yeah, best of luck. Thanks so much for joining today. And we hope to see you in another session soon. Have a great day.